Development isn't measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in a girl graduating from school, in a farmer turning a small loan into a livelihood, in clean water reaching a family home for the very first time. In 1976, the member countries of the OPEC Fund came together with a shared belief that development is stronger when nations act in solidarity, and that progress should extend beyond borders. What began as a temporary solution of support grew into a global development institution, and as our partners' needs evolved, so did we. Building expertise, expanding our reach, and offering solutions that help communities thrive. Over 5 decades, we've helped improve millions of lives, bringing electricity to homes and businesses, clean water to families and villages, transport that connects people to work, education and healthcare, and financing that builds businesses and brighter futures. Today, that founding spirit still guides us, because development is built through partnership, through solidarity, and through a shared commitment to helping others. Welcome to the OPEC Fund Development Forum 2026.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your MC, Lerato Mbele.
Much appreciated. Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Heads of Development Finance Institutions and Development Agencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the greatest pleasure to welcome you to the 5th edition of the OPEC Fund Development Forum 2026 in what is a milestone year for the Fund as we honor 50 years of development impact. The opening video message you've just seen has a poignant, simple reminder for us, and that is that development is fundamentally an action. It has a human face. You can't just measure development by statistics, but by the quality of lives impacted. How investments help countries transform and change their trajectories to be more meaningful players in a globalized world. In 50 years, the OPEC Fund has sought to do that through partnerships, collaboration, and investing in projects that really help to build sustainability and resilience at the local human level. This year's theme, a transition that empowers tomorrow. That's the overall conference theme for this 5th edition. Because we understand that the world of 2026 is vastly different from the world of 1976, and it requires a different mindset today. This is a new phase, a new era that perhaps needs a new approach to doing development dynamically, inclusively. And so the forum itself has been designed to really create a space for dialoguing in a way that is future forward and starts to cultivate solutions for the future we imagine. And it's designed to be a forum where we dialogue equitably and we co-create that future we imagine. So with those few words, it is my greatest pleasure to be with you once again at this 5th edition of the Development Forum in a milestone Golden Jubilee year for the OPEC Fund. And now it is my honor to introduce to you our first speaker, the visionary leader and president of the OPEC Fund. For his opening remarks, please welcome warmly Dr. Abdul Hamid Al Khalifa.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, Presidents, Prime Ministers, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. In the city of Vinh Yên in Vietnam, a mother once worried every morning. Her daughter had to travel a long way to school, around Dam Bank Lake. The journey was difficult. Some mornings, the mother was not sure her daughter would arrive safely. Then, a bridge was built. Today, her daughter cycles to school on a shorter, safer route. The journey that once caused worry only takes a few minutes. That is what development finance means when it reaches people. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vienna and welcome to the 5th edition of OPEC Fund Development Forum. We gather today at another difficult moment for the development finance system. In many ways, the world feels less predictable than it did only a few years ago. Yet, history reminds us that periods of uncertainty are precisely when development cooperation matters most. This year, we mark 50 years since the founding of the OPEC Fund. Not as an institution looks back to its history, but as one entering a new phase of relevance, capability, and responsibility. In 2026, the OPEC Fund expects to deploy nearly $4 billion in partner countries. In 2020, that figure was around $1.5 billion. That increase did not happen by accident. In 2019, our member countries made a deliberate decision to strengthen this institution. Since then, the OPEC Fund has raised more than $6 billion from capital markets, enabling it to do more to support development priorities in 125 countries around the world. What makes this possible is not size alone, but our model, partnerships, co-financing platforms, and relationships built over 50 years. Our purpose did not change. What changed is our capacity to deliver with a greater scale, greater speed, and broader reach. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that purpose goes back to our founding. In 1976, when this institution was founded, many developing countries faced deep financing gaps, urgent infrastructure needs, and difficult economic conditions. Hundreds of millions of people had no access to electricity. Life expectancy in the developing world was around 60 years. Child mortality was high. Nearly half of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. That year, our member countries, despite being developing countries themselves, chose to pool their resources to support the development of other countries. They did so because they believed countries should invest in a shared future. Over the 50 years that followed, the world changed. Extreme poverty fell from 44% to 9%. Life expectancy rose from 60 to 73 years. Child mortality dropped by more than half. The progress was not the result of one institution or one country or one project. It was built through sustained investment, through roads, power grids, water systems, schools, hospitals, ports, trade corridors, and stronger institutions. The OPEC Fund has been part of this story. Over 50 years, we have committed more than $32 billion across more than 4,000 projects, with an estimated total project cost of more than $240 billion. What counts most is what these investments mean for people. Last year alone, projects we completed brought better transport to 2.7 million people, clean water and sanitation to nearly 400,000 people, electricity to more than 300,000 homes, healthcare to 1.38 million people, and economic opportunity to nearly 250,000 women. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, development progress cannot be taken for granted. It must be protected, renewed, and expanded continuously. A bridge can shorten a journey to school, but a flood can destroy it overnight. A functioning trade corridor can support millions of livelihoods until a conflict or a disruption closes it. The challenge for development institutions today is to operate across multiple horizons simultaneously. That's why we created the Island Resilient Facility, to help small island developing states manage immediate shocks, while also financing the long-term systems that determine resilience and competitiveness. That's why we launched ESTAR, a $1.5 billion commitment to protect trade flows and help partner countries when the world shifts around them. That's why we are advancing Green Blue Connect, a $3 billion initiative that brings together water, energy, and the climate considerations, because the real-world challenges required integrated solutions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the next phase of development will not be defined only by access to capital, but access to systems, reliable energy, resilient infrastructure, digital connectivity, and functioning institutions. The countries that can build these systems effectively will be better positioned to compete, innovate, and create opportunity for their populations. This is why energy access and energy security are no longer sectoral issues. They are the bedrock of any economic strategy. Today, we will discuss how local economies can capture more value, how cities can create opportunities, how infrastructure can connect communities and markets, how energy and water systems can be made stronger, and how digital tools can help government serve people faster and better. These conversations matter because development is becoming more complex, more interconnected, and more demanding of institutions that can adapt to a changing world. For the OPEC Fund, this means looking beyond the scale of our financing alone. Our ambition for the years ahead is to deliver development faster, broader, and with a greater impact through stronger partnerships, innovative financing, and solutions that respond to the realities the countries face. We want to help countries build the systems that power modern economies so they can grow, compete, and create opportunity for their people. Ultimately, our success will be measured by the opportunities we help create, the resilience we help build, and the lives we help improve. That is the future we are working ahead for. 50 years ago, our member countries chose cooperation over indifferences. They chose long-term partnerships over short-term advantage. And they chose to invest in the future of countries beyond their own borders. That vision remains just as necessary today. Development cooperation is not inevitable. Each generation must choose to renew it and sustain it. In Benyan, that choice means a girl now travels to school on a safer road. For her family, this infrastructure means opportunity. It means dignity. It means possibility. Our shared mission is to create these opportunities for millions more people across the countries we serve. As we enter our 50 years, as we enter our next 50 years, that remains the standard by which we will measure our success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Hamid Al Khalifa. Thank you for your leadership. And we know that to build an organization, you need vision, sound leadership, to establish a sound organizational culture buttressed by good governance. And a lot of that work is supported by a board or a ministerial council. And so now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a man who has been a huge champion of the work of the OPEC Fund for International Development. He's also a member of the Ministerial Council, and he also happens to be the Minister of Finance for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Please welcome warmly His Excellency Mohammed Al Jadaan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I must admit that it is going to be quite tough to beat Abdul Hamid. A minister coming after a president is quite a challenge, but I will try. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is really a great honor to extend my congratulations to the OPEC Fund for International Development and its member countries, and this milestone, 50 years of partnership, solidarity, and development impact, as Abdul Hamid rightly said. Over the past half a century, the OPEC Fund has helped address the world's most difficult development challenges. It has supported sustainable development, growth, prosperity, and improved conditions across low and middle-income countries. Its work has helped millions access electricity, quality education, clean energy solutions, expanding economic opportunity, and improving essential services across communities in need. This anniversary is not only a moment to celebrate achievements. It is a moment to take stock of lessons learned and challenge ourselves on what the next 50 years should look like. Today, countries face difficult economic conditions, shaped by uncertainty, fragmentation, geopolitical conflicts, trade tensions, debt vulnerabilities, energy insecurity, and indeed a shifting international development landscape, all threatening to reverse the development goals. To prevent that, the OPEC Fund, together with other development partners, most of whom are represented here today, can help lead in three important directions. First, resilience must be at the heart of our response. Resilience must be strategic, long-term, and proactive, not reactive. Countries strengthen by building adaptable systems that can withstand compounding shocks while maintaining essential services. This requires investment in infrastructure, energy, food security, health, education, and, as importantly, institutional capacity. It also requires inclusive, locally driven policies that diversify and improve livelihoods, stabilize fragile markets, and reduce exposure to future risks. Second point, no country can address development challenges alone. Development finance institutions, including the OPEC Fund, play a vital role in mobilizing resources, sharing knowledge, and supporting innovation. The private sector is also essential in driving investment, creating jobs, and delivering practical solutions. By working together, we can better align our efforts, crowd in capital, and maximize development impact. You have heard His Excellency Dr. Abdel Hamid mentions this very clearly. Third point, and possibly the most important, is trust and country ownership must remain central. Development finance is most effective when aligned with national priorities, responsive to local realities, and built on genuine partnerships. The OPEC Fund can further scale up its activity and engagement with partner countries to ensure that financing strategies align with their development plans and priorities. This will help maximize resource efficiency, strengthen implementation, and deliver impactful results. At the same time, development partners must be candid. And I would stress on this. We actually rely on that candid feedback that development partners provide to us and to other countries who are participating in these activities. Candid feedback and advocacy for bold, long-term structural reforms that support resilience, growth, and prosperity. Your Excellencies, 50 years is not a ceiling. It is actually the foundation. Working together, we can protect the gains that we have achieved over the past 50 years, but more importantly, we can build on them with stronger partnerships and shared commitments to a sustainable development in decades to come. Thank you very much for being here.
We thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Minister of Finance for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed Al Jadaan. So, distinguished guests, as you drove to the conference venue today, I'm sure you marveled at the beauty of Vienna. And as we sit in this auspicious space, I suppose many of us have also looked up at the ceilings, the frescoes, and just were impressed and enthralled by what we see. So we are being hosted in this elegant and beautiful space, the Hofburg Palace, which is a 13th century building that once served as the imperial residence of the royal family back in the 13th century. Well, today, Austria is a more egalitarian society, and all of us, regardless of station, can enjoy being in this place and can also enjoy the beauty and splendor of the city of Vienna, its cuisine, its music, its historic traditions. And we're really grateful for the support of the government of Austria. And so now it is with pleasure that I introduce this video message by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Austria, Alexander van der Bellen.
Dear President Al Khalifa, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to Vienna for the 5th OPEC Fund Development Forum to mark the 50th anniversary of the OPEC Fund for International Development. My sincere congratulations to the organization, its member countries, its leadership, and its dedicated staff on this important milestone. The presence of so many high-level participants today reflects the importance of the organization and its purpose. Since the establishment of the OPEC Fund for International Development in 1976, Austria has had the privilege of serving as its home. As a host country, we are proud to support the fund which, for decades, is contributing to international cooperation, sustainable development, and global solidarity. Austria shares these commitments. This is reflected in our cooperation with the OPEC Fund through the Austrian Development Agency. Together we have worked on impactful initiatives from advancing renewable energy in Southern Africa to strengthening education in Nepal. Ladies and gentlemen, among the many global challenges we face, the climate emergency and the urgent need to transition to sustainable and secure energy systems is among the most defining for our future. This transition is about more than technology and infrastructure. It is about strengthening resilience, empowering people and communities, and creating new ways for sustainable growth. Our motto today, a transition that empowers our tomorrow, captures this ambition. Achieving this goal will require determination, investment, and strong international partnerships. Institutions such as the OPEC Fund play a crucial role in this regard. As we celebrate the fund's achievements of the past 5 decades, I therefore encourage all of you to continue the support and cooperation for the global energy transition. We need all hands on deck. In this spirit, I wish you all a productive and forward-looking exchange today and continued success to the OPEC Fund in the years to come.
We're grateful for the support, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Austria. And His Excellency was also reminding us of our conference theme for this 5th edition, A Transition to Empower Tomorrow. And how do we get there? It's the sub-theme he referenced, by strengthening resilience in vulnerable societies. It's a moot point, but I'll remind us all of it anyway, that we're living in uncertain times. It's been referred to this morning. There's polycrises, climate pressures, exogenous market forces, high inflation, conflict, fragility. But that shouldn't deter us from doing the right things, which is to build better and sustainably. And so now I yield the floor to a man who's going to reflect on this issue of strengthening resilience in vulnerable societies. Please welcome His Excellency, the President of São Tomé and Príncipe, Carlos Manuel Villanova. His Excellency is going to address us in French, so if you need a translation, the headsets are available for you, and the French to English translation is channel 1. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Morning. I would like, first of all, to let you know how I made the option to speak in French, and I thank you for your attention. Monsieur le Président du Fonds OPEC,
President of the OPEC Fund for International Development,
Abdelhamid
Dr. Abdelhamid Khalifa,
Madame la Première Ministre de Barbados,
Prime Minister of Barbados,
chers ministres,
dear ministers, representatives of the guest countries here, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, might I set out my deep gratitude for the kind invitation and the warm welcome shown me and the delegation accompanying me. It's a great honor for me and a genuine privilege to be with you today, to take part in this important meeting. I really appreciate the welcome given me, the spirit of cooperation which characterizes this event, as well as the opportunity given to me to take part in enriching dialogue and a fruitful exchange of experience. São Tomé and Príncipe, 2 islands, 230,000 inhabitants, a country where the ocean is not a backdrop, it's all defining. It makes us who we are, what we build, and what we risk losing. I've not come to give you a courtesy address. I've come to name the truth, which too often in diplomatic circles they try hard to soften. That small island developing states, for them, crisis is not a prospect, it's everyday life. Might I be a little bit more precise? The coastlines are receding. Infrastructures built in one season is destroyed in the next. Communities which have no other option than to constantly adapt. I've been Minister of Public Works, Infrastructure, Natural Resources and the Environment. I stuck to the plans. I saw the damage. I know what it costs to build in an island state and what climate change wipes out. São Tomé and Príncipe gives us less than 0.01% of global greenhouse gases. 0.01%. And yet we pay the highest price. It's unjust. Let's call it by its name. There's a second injustice, more silent, but it's just as devastating. To finance a school, a hospital, a pipeline for drinking water, long-term strategic infrastructure is of use. Things which are of use to whole generations means that a small country like mine must take on short-term borrowing at high rates on markets which don't acknowledge us as trustworthy partners. The international financial system was conceived for large stakeholders. It wasn't conceived for us. Each year, my government is confronted with a choice which no government should have to make, to meet obligations to creditors or to invest in its people. This choice comes from an unjust architecture, what we all collectively have the responsibility to reform. Climate vulnerability and financial vulnerability are two sides of the same coin of injustice. They need a single response. That's why, when I hear people talking about the V2V compact, I don't mean a new acronym. I mean an architecture of solidarity anchored in reality. Water, education, health. They're the three pillars of human dignity. It's precisely the sectors in which vulnerable states have the most pressing needs and where international financing is the most inadequate. This compact is based on a principle that I unreservedly defend: national ownership. There are countries which experience these challenges which must define the solutions. Not funding agencies, not institutions from their headquarters. Us. We don't want others to think this over for us. We want partners who move forward with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I've come here to make a statement from up front. São Tomé and Príncipe has taken the decision to join the V20 and the V2V compact. Thank you. It's not a protocol formality. It's a political act, a choice of sovereignty. By joining this compact, we are choosing to be in the coalition which defines the de facto meaning of solidarity. Not as observers, but as stakeholders. We come with our experience, our determination, and the voice of a people which has a right to something better. But to conclude with the crux of this, behind each piece of data to which we refer in this room, there is a face, a mother who walks miles and miles for drinking water, a child deprived of schooling for a lack of infrastructure, a patient without access to medical care. They're not symbols, they are realities. Vulnerability is not preordained. It's a condition that ambitious partnerships can transform into viability, dignity, a future. But that won't come about on its own. That comes about when leaders who meet in bodies like this choose to promote action over sympathy. I express my gratitude to President Khalifa and to the OPEC Fund, to Barbados, and to the CVF V20, to all of those who have had the courage to build rather than to talk. We're here, we're ready. In this emergency, we have no time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you for your reflections, Your Excellency, and reminding us that people-centric leadership matters. International reforms matter to create more equity and inclusion in the world. Thank you for those reflections. As His Excellency the President of São Tomé and Príncipe reflects, it reminds me that many leaders today, many commentators are talking about the need to really improve on multilateralism. Because when multilateralism works better and is executed in the right way, it becomes more agile and proactive. And that's really what we're talking about as we're thinking about the future. So our next feature is a conversation to be led by Her Excellency, the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, who's also the chair of the V20. and she'll be sharing her insights with Noor Amash, a senior anchor for Al Ashaq Business at Bloomberg, in conversation. Your Excellency and Noor.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, welcome to this session at the OPEC Fund Development Forum 2026. We meet today at a moment when many vulnerable countries are being asked to manage debt pressure, climate shocks, and development needs all at once, while investing in the systems that underpin long-term resilience, from water to education and health. This conversation today is intended to explore the thinking behind the Vulnerability to Viability Act, the V2V Compact, and the broader efforts to align financing more closely with the realities facing climate-vulnerable countries. It is my privilege to welcome here Prime Minister Mia Amore-Motley of Barbados, who joins this conversation today in her dual capacity as Head of Government of Barbados and the Chair of the CVF V20. Prime Minister Motley, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me here and being able to help celebrate this momentous occasion with the OPEC Fund for Development. 50 years is a significant milestone, especially when you've done good for people.
Thank you so much. So without further ado, we would like to start. And also allow me to congratulate OPEC Fund on its 50th anniversary, and I join my voice to their excellencies that have spoken earlier here today. So let's start our conversation by talking about the V2V Compact, which is built on simple but demanding principle that countries lead and partners align. So I will direct the question directly to you. With the compact being adopted here today, what has actually shifted in how partner institutions are thinking and acting, and what still needs to change?
Let me give you context. Last October, the Inter-American Development Bank invited a number of us to meet with members of the Arab Cooperation League, in particular the OPEC Fund for International Development, and a number of the sovereign wealth funds of the Gulf states. And as chair of the V20, I asked a simple question. Are we prepared to make a serious course correction in international development finance? And I asked that question because more than 80 years ago, when the institutions that we have now come to accept were being formed, the Bretton Woods institutions and subsequently the multilateral development banks, we saw them being formed in a world that was far more willing to accept the realities of development and willing to be able to create an environment in which people had time. Britain, when it fought World War I, went and issued bonds in 1914 and 1917. By 1932, they understood that they could not service those bonds while seeking to borrow new money to rebuild infrastructure that had been damaged, and indeed to prepare what might have come, what looked as though would be another war. They were given that time, and they never repaid those bonds until this century, 100 years later. Germany, when it lost World War II, was given the accommodation by the international community to be able to cap its debt service by a percentage of its exports. We don't ask for charity as developing countries of the V20. Our countries are the ones who are on the front line of this climate crisis. But our countries did not cause it, and our countries at the point of independence did not receive a development framework or a bounty to allow us to meet the challenges of the development deficit. That's a lot of fancy language for the fact that we didn't have schools properly equipped, we didn't have enough clinics or hospitals, and in many instances since independence, the water infrastructure where it existed has become aged, and the level of non-revenue water in many of our countries at the same time that we face droughts has increased significantly. So what I proposed on behalf of the V20 countries is let us start with small steps. Let us do the things that fundamentally are critical to human existence. Without education, we have no capacity to lift ourselves beyond the circumstances of our birth, and we have no capacity to be able to facilitate inclusive growth in a community or a country. Without water, well, we simply can't live. Water is the staff of life, as we know. And without health, as I've said for the last few days, we can have many problems in life until we have a health problem, and then we have one problem.
Exactly.
So that we felt that by targeting education, health, and water, that what we were doing was basic to what human dignity requires, basic to what countries must have as a platform. But what's the problem? If I'm being asked to repay for those investments within 10, 12, 15 years, the scale of debt service is such that you're asking me to choose between that and other development imperatives like security, like coastal protection. There are a whole host like infrastructure, roads, bridges. You heard our president of the OPEC Fund Development talk about the wonderful difference that building a bridge could make simply to the well-being and the mental wellness of parents who were worried about how their children got to school. These things ought not to be the subject of choice, particularly when it is easy for us to match the terms of our investment, the terms of the loan, with the life of the asset which we are building. The hospital in Barbados, which we now have to go and fix, is 60 years old. So why should I borrow 10 and 12-year money to fix a 60-year-old asset, knowing full well that it will last another 40, 50, 60 years, other than perhaps refurbishment and equipment refreshing? Similarly, our water mains are over 100 years old. Why should I have to borrow 15-year money to replace water mains that are going to last at least a century? But you can call it 40 or 50 years if a century is too long a horizon for you. So these are the questions that we asked. And as if there was a special magic in the room, the OPEC Fund for International Development and all of the other sovereign wealth funds felt, I believe, the poignancy of the moment and said they would step up to the plate. And I'm here today to report that for the last 10 months, our teams in the V20 from Barbados, from the Arab Cooperation League, but in particular being led by the OPEC Fund for International Development, have literally worked non-stop in order to allow us to be here, because we believe we can send the world a message. And we believe it is a message coming from the global south to the global south, that where there is a will, there is a capacity to do ordinary things in extraordinary ways. We are asking simply to finance education, health, and water. And when we look at it, if I contextualize it, that's the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's the SDGs that open up other SDGs. Because if we get those three right, we get a serious momentum to attacking poverty. We get those right, we have a serious momentum to removing gender discrimination. We get those right, we get the institutional development and the partnerships that the SDGs speak about. So let me say from the outset this morning, on behalf of the 74 countries, and I can now say that since we've started, in the last few weeks, we now have 4 countries wishing to join. The president of Sao Tome and Principe is here, and he's made his announcement. The government of Panama has sent its request. The government of the DRC has sent its request, and the government of the Central African Republic has also sent its request. And I have every confidence that we will be close to 2 billion people. We are at 1.7 and rising. And what's the reality? That's a quarter of humanity. That's 1 in every 4 people who stand to benefit from us changing the trajectory of development finance. It should not only be either countries that can benefit from 50-year money, because as I keep saying, one of the hallmarks of our vulnerability is that we can move from upper middle income status to poverty overnight because of the risk of wipeout, literally from hurricanes and from other major calamities associated with the climate crisis. And by the way, it is as if the gods have conspired with us this week in Europe to remind us through the heat wave that there is something called a climate crisis.
Yes, I agree with you. Climate change is real. Never have I been in Europe when it's this hot like this year. Yeah. So, Prime Minister, if we were to point to one practical signal of credibility after today, what would show vulnerable countries that this effort is beginning to change the financing behavior and not just the language around it?
Okay, so let's get down to basics. The compact that we are launching, vulnerability to viability, is premised on 4 pillars. 1, that we start to scale up concessional finance. 2, that we look at mobilizing private capital so that we can increase the pool of capital available to these countries. 3, that we have country ownership of the programs. And 4, that we take account of the shock adjustment provisions that are necessary. And to break that down, that's simply saying, look, we need to ensure that the loans that we sign have natural disaster clauses, climate debt resilience clauses, whatever you choose to call it. And Barbados has been a champion of this through the Bridgetown Initiative, recognizing that if a hurricane hits us tomorrow, God forbid, and we have a huge set of damage, our natural disaster clauses in our bonds will allow us to pause our debt, both principal and interest, for 2 years in a structured way that does not harm the lender, but that gives the borrower all the elbow room that we need. Now, why is this important? Regrettably, the world has not come to grips yet with the fact that we are on the verge of a crisis with respect to insurance. You cannot get access to insurance in the west coast of the United States of America for wildfires. You cannot get insurance in some parts of Florida with respect to floods and hurricanes. And if you look at what happened, in fact, the results in Mar-a-Lago in the elections held there a few months ago reflected the fact that people can't get access to mortgages because they can't get access to insurance. And we know that what is not insurable is not investable. So that when you start to look at the importance of the natural disaster clauses, in our case, it would unlock the equivalent of 18% of GDP over 2 years. There is no company, no country, no entity that will give any country that is the victim of a climate crisis moment the equivalent of 18% of GDP.
Of course.
But this simple legal metric, and forgive me, I am a lawyer, without harming the lender and in assisting the borrower, immediately changes the possibilities for the protection of people's lives and livelihoods. Now, they said to us that the markets will never take it. Oh, you are trying to do that domestically. The international capital markets will never take it. Well, my country went to the international capital markets last year to raise $500 million US on the emerging market index. We got bids of almost 6 times that, and we got not only natural disaster clauses, but pandemic clauses. Because it makes sense. So that these shock provisions are necessary. The mobilizing of private capital, as I said, the use of guarantees, the use of first losses, a whole range of instruments that can literally enlarge. Just now when President Al Khalifa spoke, he showed you that the amount put in by OPEC as part and parcel of a larger pool of funds that triggered development for so many projects. And the ability to bring together, and this is one of the things for which I'm proud, the ability to bring together the African Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, and all of the other major multilateral development banks at this point in time to be able to help 74 countries, soon to be 78 countries, a quarter of the world's humanity, is the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. We are not here to literally make academic proclamations. We are here to make sure that water will be delivered to my people in Barbados. My country is one of the 15 most water-scarce countries. That education and clinics, schools and clinics can be delivered, whether in Sao Tome and Principe, whether in any of the other countries that belong to this entity. And it can only happen if there is respect for the issues and the wishes of the country, such that it is a country-owned program rather than a top-down imposed set of metrics from those who are understanding of development but who do not understand the needs of the particular country.
Well, that's a strong message you've got here, Prime Minister. So if we want to talk about between Vienna today and the October annual meetings, the white papers process will translate the compact's 4 pillars into concrete implementation pathways, financing mechanisms and targets. So, Prime Minister, what would success look like by October? How will you be able to measure it?
What does success look like? 40 and 50-year loans for schools, to build hospitals, to build clinics, to replace water mains. 40 and 50-year loans at concessional rates. We want the lenders to make money, but we want the persons who are borrowing to be able to pursue other investment opportunities with those same lenders, by the way. But it is Hobson's choice for us to have to choose between, do we protect our coastal infrastructure or do we lay water mains? In one instance, the water mains lead to non-revenue water, so that for every gallon of water that goes through the pipes, you lose half of a gallon. Similarly, if you don't do coastal protection, you run the risk of saltwater intrusion into your aquifers. But if I can only borrow X amount because my debt service is high because I'm repaying within 10, 12 years, I have to choose between the water main replacement and the coastal protection. So it means that I end up saving the amount of water that goes through the pipe, but I end up losing the source of water because of saltwater intrusion. It is madness, it makes no sense, and it keeps developing countries into a perpetual vicious cycle if we do not have the courage and the capacity to say we have solutions that will not hurt anyone, but that can create and amplify the opportunities such that the numbers and the metrics shown on the screen of increasing life expectancy from 60 to 73 can go to 80 or 85, or that the number of children who die, instead of it being 37 per thousand from 93, we can get it down to 10 per thousand. My country, and I haven't even told my ambassador who's here with me, because she announced it as a young Minister of Health 30 years ago, when Barbados guaranteed AZT to pregnant ladies to ensure that we could minimize the transmission of HIV from mother to child. Next month, we will declare to the world that we are now completely free with respect to child inheritance of HIV. That is not by serendipity. That is as a result of 30 years of investment and action. It cost our country to provide those pregnant ladies with that medication. And it cost us at a time when perhaps we had other options and other imperatives. but we made the decision that that is what is important. So look, the financial markets today are short-term. Everything is quick, and that's good for those who need to make some fast money. But for those of us who have the responsibility of taking care of people's lives, then we need fairness. Fair for you, yes, to make a return on your investment, but fair to those who borrow to be able to be faithful to the promise of lifting people out of poverty, removing injustice, and creating opportunities for intergenerational wealth transfer.
Prime Minister, where is the resistance now when it comes to the financing? Is it the markets? Is it the current situation or environment of high interest rates and tight monetary policy across the globe? Where is the resistance? Is it in the multilateral development bank's abilities?
The absence of conversation and the fear of the unknown. Look, my brother, the minister from Saudi Arabia of Finance, is another human being just like me. We can talk. We find common purpose and we make pathways together. That is what is required with the international financial markets, particularly with the credit rating agencies. Every bank in here, every fund in here is frightened for the reality of what does a downgrade look like. But we are seeing a level of geopolitical instability in today's world that is driven exactly because we have not taken care of the people who we should. The people in the north are worried about the migrants from the south. The migrants from the south would like the opportunity to stay home and stay with their families. They do not want to be bombed. They do not want to have to move. They want to be part and parcel of a culture and a community that is theirs. But if there is nothing to eat, or if the climate crisis has made their lands barren and that they are facing drought, then they have to move in order to be able to make a living. We need to recognize that the quickest way to bring about stability globally is by allowing countries to bring development to their people rather than having to force themselves on other people who don't want them. And this is a conversation that needs to be had holistically rather than us having narrow conversations in pockets. And it is the absence of global conversation, it's the absence of bringing people in a room to discuss fundamental matters that have perhaps medium to long-term pathways, but pathways nonetheless that will help us as a world to be faithful to one, the planet and the biodiversity that we must protect so that we can continue to live here. Two, to protect our soils so that we don't have decline in food production and food yields as is starting to happen. To protect our water, because there is no justification for some people having an abundance and others having none, and to protect the opportunity for people to live the best life that they can live. We do not have the conversations. I'm not sure how much conversation has taken place with the credit rating agencies, but they're not from Mars. They're from the planet Earth. And therefore, if we know that this is part of the problem, then let's discuss it. And how can we say so when we already have long-term institutional investors, insurance companies, pension funds, who want assets that have long maturity and give them the opportunity to be able to ensure that they can benefit from the length of those long-range instruments. So I really am not sure what is the problem other than an absence of courage and an absence of willingness to sit down in the same room and be able to solve the problem that will make a huge difference to the Global South. And that's why I really want to commend the Arab Cooperation League. You know, Bob Marley used to tell us, he who feels it knows it. And perhaps it is because they still remember the days before oil and their own development trajectory, that it has sparked something in their hearts, and to recognize that all we ask for is a level playing field. This is not countries in one section of the world, and that's the beauty of the V20. We have countries from Africa, from the Pacific, from the Indian Ocean, from Latin America, from the Caribbean. We have countries representative of the entire global community. And we've come here with one voice to work with the members of the Arab Cooperation League to celebrate on this Golden Jubilee the possibility of what development finance should look like. And I would hope that the World Bank, which has made some progress, my brother Ajay has really tried to make some progress, will continue to go the distance. Because 50-year loans should not just be for climate-related loans that are transboundary. It ought to be for within countries as well. Because the vulnerability of these countries demands that we make the investments. Every speaker who came on this platform this morning spoke on resilience. Every speaker spoke about resilience and adaptability. If we want that, then we have to confront the facts. And the reality is countries like the great powers of the 20th century who went on their knees needed the benefit of 50 and 100-year loans. Our countries need 40 and 50-year loans. If we can get middle and upper middle income countries getting 40-year loans for education, water, and health, and we can get the low income and the HIPC countries getting 50-year loans, which they do with IDA, but IDA has a limited envelope, that is success.
Prime Minister.
And if we can add the natural disaster clauses, and one thing I haven't spoken about is the debt swaps. The debt swaps are real. And Barbados has been able to do a debt swap for blue bonds, where over 15 years, we are able to invest the savings in marine protection. And then the second one, which we did, which was quite innovative, was to aggregate the savings that you would get and make an investment into a capital asset, a new sewage treatment plant that treats water to ensure that we send treated water into the aquifers and also pipe it to an area for agricultural development. And we were able to do that with the help of the IDB, with the help of the Green Climate Fund, and with the help of the European Investment Bank. We're now, for the first time, bringing together the World Bank, the IDB, the Latin American Development Bank, CAF, and the Caribbean Development Bank in a debt for social swap, where the savings that will accrue will be used to be able to boost our health sector and to be able to deal with behavioral change, because much of what leads to problems in the health care sector is individual choices of individuals, and therefore we need to be able to make sure that there can be behavioral change as well. So the use of debt swaps, like guarantees, like first loss claims, will help countries significantly in being able to navigate the path of development.
Prime Minister, if we speak in a broader picture here, we're at an age, we're in a situation where even developing countries are tackling high debt to GDP ratios, from the United States all the way to some European countries and other developing countries as well. What is the opportunity cost now that multilateral development institutions and banks have to forego in order to assist climate countries affected by the climate change, countries like Barbados and other countries that are in actual need? So there's an opportunity cost foregone here. How can we convince them to forego this?
The reality is that if we don't have countries stepping up with pace and at scale, we're going to see more countries fall through the cracks. And this is happening at a time when the North Atlantic countries are facing fiscal difficulties. And then those fiscal difficulties are compounded by the lure to spend money on defense contracts because of the spectacle of war across the globe. But the reality is that if we don't stabilize some of the developing countries that we have, we will find that they too will then add to the creation of greater insecurity. In my own region, we have Haiti that is still undergoing the most difficult conditions as a result of lack of human security with the presence of the gangs. We have Cuba that is facing an unbelievable humanitarian crisis as a result of the lack of access to fuel. And that has other wider geopolitical implications that we need to confront, because if there is an exodus from Cuba and Haiti, where do you think they will first go? To countries that are nearest. Who are the countries that are nearest to them geographically? And we can come to the Middle East and see what is happening here. And I really hope that peace will reign, because the actions in this part of the world, in the Middle East, are having global implications with respect to persons' access to fuel, with respect to inflation, with respect to lack of security, because at the end of the day, if countries are spending more money investing in subsidizing fuel to be able to protect people, it means that they're spending less money elsewhere. So that we need peace, we need security, but we also need to make sure that we don't add countries to that insecure pool. And that is what will happen when development is not brought to people. People will rise up, and we've seen it from Europe to Asia to Africa to the Caribbean.
Prime Minister Motley, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. It was a very insightful discussion, and thank you everybody for listening to those remarks by Prime Minister Motley.
Thank you, and let us leave Vienna. Thank you, and let us leave Vienna with a clear purpose, that it is our duty not to be able to reflect that we signed an agreement or a compact here, but that this is what is going to make a difference to water flowing, children learning, and people being healed. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take it. Please allow me to ask President Abdul Hamid Al Khalifa, President of OPEC Fund, to the stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for working together for the benefit of vulnerable countries and vulnerable people. And as we listen today, we need a system that is more responsive to the need of vulnerable groups and vulnerable countries, and also put them on the driving seats when it comes to decision making. And this is maybe a great privilege to, with Her Excellency, the Prime Minister, to announce the Vulnerability to Viability Compact, which is going to be not only between OPEC Fund and Barbados, but vulnerable countries. It is 74 countries around the world. 78. And now 78 with the 4 countries that you mentioned. But also with a good partners when it comes to the development, good partners, institutions, 14 of them. And also in addition to the Arab Coordination Group, which yesterday all of them announced their support for that. So this is very important. As Your Excellency mentioned, it will not only adapt the current system, but also will focus in 3 areas: finance, or concessional finance, and the tenor of those loans, which is very important to take care of, but also mobilizing more resources, using the resources of private sector, which is very important. The third element, which is extremely important, is putting the countries on the driving seats when it comes to their priorities, which is very important for the development and also the impact that any development action will have on the ground. So this is a great privilege to have you. And I would also call on our partners to also join us here on the stage for a picture, just to commemorate this occasion. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And while our partners are joining us, I just really, on behalf of the 78 countries, want to say a profound thank you for being able to bring dignity to almost a quarter of the world's population. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we allow our partners to take their photograph, let me just remind you, in a short while we'll be having a 30-minute coffee break, and then we will resume with the conference agenda in the gallery space adjacent and in the ceremonial hall just behind us. So coffee break for half an hour, please. Thank you.